The station was empty. Just hauntingly empty. It's the kind of emptiness that feels like a held breath, where the only sound is the frantic pounding in your own chest. My breath plumed in the frigid December air, each little cloud a ghost reminding me of the time slipping away. 11:47 p.m. Christmas Eve. The last train home, my train, left 7 minutes ago. 7 minutes. That was the difference between my warm bed, the smell of pine needles, and this crushing, silent despair on a forgotten platform, under the dead-eyed gaze of a flickering fluorescent light. I sank onto a bench, the cold seeping right through my coat. It was a hollow ache that had nothing to do with the temperature. This was it. I was going to spend Christmas alone in this God-forsaken middle-of-nowhere station. And then I heard it. It wasn't the familiar rumble of a modern locomotive. This was different. A mournful, long drawn-out whistle that seemed to tear right through the fabric of the night. Down the tracks, a single pinprick of light grew steadily larger. An unscheduled train. It wasn't on any departure board. It wasn't supposed to be here. But as it glided into the station, all polished mahogany and gleaming brass, looking like something ripped from the early 1900s, I didn't care. It was a way out. It was a chance. Desperation was a claw in my throat, silencing the small, rational part of my brain that was screaming at me to stay put. When the doors hissed open, I didn't hesitate. I just stepped across the threshold, leaving the cold, familiar world behind. The inside of the train was breathtaking. It was like stepping into a museum piece, a perfectly preserved relic from a bygone era. The cars were paneled in dark, rich wood, polished to a mirror shine, and the seats were deep, velvet things you could just sink into forever. Soft, warm light from ornate brass lamps cast a golden, dreamlike glow over everything. It was a golden cage, luxurious, but deeply unsettling. There were other passengers, but not many. A woman in a vintage shawl stared blankly out the window, her reflection a pale mask in the glass. A man in a crisp suit sat unnervingly still, his hands folded neatly in his lap. Their faces were vacant, their eyes hollow, like they were just statues placed there for effect. A strange, almost cloying scent hung in the air. Old perfume, machine oil, and something else. Something faintly metallic and foul, like rotten eggs. I found an empty compartment and slid the heavy wooden door shut. The silence inside was thick, absolute. For a second, a wave of relief washed over me. I was moving. I was going somewhere. It didn't matter if this train wasn't going to my exact hometown. It was heading in the right direction, away from the failure of that lonely platform. I leaned my head back, the plush velvet cushioning my skull, and just let myself breathe. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the track was a soothing lullaby. But as the minutes stretched on, the silence began to feel less like peace and more like a predator. The train didn't sway or rattle like a normal train. It moved with this slick, unnatural smoothness, like it was gliding through water, not rolling on steel. The wrongness of it all started to creep back in, a cold dread coiling in my gut. I tried to dismiss it. I was exhausted, stressed out. My mind was playing tricks on me. I was just tired. Things would feel normal in the morning. I had no idea that on this train, morning was never going to come. The compartment door slid open with a heavy groan that made me jolt upright. A man stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the warm light of the corridor. The conductor. He was tall and gaunt, dressed in a uniform that looked decades out of date, the fabric frayed at the cuffs and collar. His face was all sharp angles and deep shadows, and his eyes seemed to just swallow the light around them. He had a cap pulled down low, but I could feel his gaze on me, cold and heavy as a tombstone. He didn't say a word. He just stood there for a long moment, gave a stiff, formal nod, and slid the door shut. A few seconds later, the intercom crackled to life, a burst of static that scraped at my nerves. Then, a voice filled the car. It was the same cold, flat tone I imagined the conductor would have, totally devoid of warmth, of any humanity. "Good evening and welcome aboard the midnight service." The voice paused, letting the words hang in the dead air. "We're pleased to have you with us. For your safety, comfort, and continued existence, you must adhere to a short list of rules. Your compliance isn't requested. It's required. Make one mistake, and it may cost you your life." My blood ran cold. This had to be a joke, right? Some kind of weird holiday prank? But the dead seriousness in that voice, the absolute lack of irony, told me it wasn't. I leaned forward, pressing my ear against the cool wood of the door, straining to hear. "Rule number 1, the voice droned on. You may see other trains on parallel tracks. These are ghost trains. Do not mistake them for your own. Don't try to board them, and don't make eye contact with their passengers. They are envious." I swallowed hard. My throat was suddenly bone dry. Ghost trains? What the hell did that mean? "Rule number 2. You might hear a flute outside your window. If it plays once, you're safe. If it plays twice, be careful. If it plays 3 times, get out of your current carriage immediately." My mind reeled. Flee where? "Rule number 3. Keep your ticket in your right pocket at all times. Do not let it out of your possession. Someone or something might try to buy it from you. They will be persuasive. Refuse all offers, even if the date on your ticket looks like it's changed." I instinctively patted my right pocket. The crisp paper of the ticket felt like both a shield and a target. "Rule number 4. Count your fellow passengers. Memorize their faces. If the number of passengers changes without the train stopping, or if you see a face that's slightly different, you have to get off the train at the next chance you get." My eyes darted around my empty compartment. A terrifying new game had just started. "Rule number 5. The lavatories are available, but they are off limits between 12:06 and 12:26 a.m. The plumbing is sensitive during this time." A 20-minute blackout. The specificity was horrifying. "Rule number 6. You will hear bells. Not the train's bell. Old railroad bells. Ignore them. They signal new arrivals, but they are not passengers like you." Rule number 7. It's tempting to rest your head against the cool window glass or to fall asleep watching the world go by. Don't. We aren't responsible for what's on the other side of the glass or what it might do to you if you're sleeping too close. A chill traced its way down my spine. The voice paused before delivering the final, most bizarre rule. "Rule number 8. The conductor will perform an inspection. He will check your ticket and he will check your hands. You're allowed no more than 2 rings per hand. And it's in your best interest to know the driver's name. If the driver is Jack, you may have a pleasant journey. If the driver is Martin, God help you all." The intercom clicked off, plunging the car back into a suffocating silence. This wasn't a prank. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was a list of survival instructions. The beautiful vintage train no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a meticulously crafted trap, and I had just walked right into it. The train picked up speed, the wheels clicking like a metronome counting down to some unknown horror. I sat frozen, the conductor's words echoing in my mind. The rules were like a virus, infecting my thoughts, turning every shadow and sound into a threat. I couldn't rest. I couldn't think. All I could do was wait. And I didn't have to wait long. It started with a flicker of light at the edge of my vision. I turned to the window and my breath caught in my throat. Another train was moving alongside ours on a track that shouldn't have been there. It was a skeletal, blackened wreck of a thing, wrapped in faint, ethereal flames that gave off no heat. A ghost train. Through its grimy, shattered windows, I could see figures, their faces twisted in silent, eternal screams. They were pressed against the glass, their hands clawing, their eyes burning with a hateful desperation. A low, wailing whistle like a dying animal echoed from the phantom engine. It was a vision from hell, sliding past my window as casually as a commuter express. I felt a morbid pull to keep watching, but the rules slammed back into my head. I squeezed my eyes shut and turned away, my knuckles white on the armrests. I focused on the feeling of the ticket in my right pocket, a flimsy piece of paper that was my only anchor to reality. Just as the ghost train's wail faded, my compartment door slid open. Not the conductor. It was a man, short and portly, with a disturbingly wide, fixed smile. His eyes, though, were cold and sharp, like chips of ice. "Pardon me," he said, his voice as smooth as silk. "Lovely evening for a journey, isn't it?" I just stared, my heart pounding. He gestured toward my pocket. "I see you have a ticket. A fine thing. But maybe a bit restrictive. I'd be willing to purchase it from you. Name your price. 1,000? 10,000? Enough so you'll never have to work another day in your life." Rule number 3. They will be persuasive. The offer was insane, but for a fleeting second the temptation washed over me. A lifetime of wealth just to get out of whatever this was. I clutched the ticket through my pants. "It's not for sale," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The man's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, but everything is for sale. Perhaps you'd prefer something else? A different destination? A different time?" He took a step closer, and for a split second, his face seemed to shimmer and distort, the features melting into something monstrous, all teeth and shadow, before snapping back. My blood turned to ice. "No," I said, more forcefully this time. "Leave me alone." The smile vanished. The friendly mask dropped, revealing a flicker of raw, ancient hunger in his eyes. He stared at me for a long, terrifying moment, then gave a curt, mocking bow. "As you wish." And he was gone. The door slid shut, leaving me trembling in the golden light. The reality of my situation crashed down on me with physical force. The rules were real, and I had just survived my first test. That encounter shattered any hope that this was just a bad dream. I was awake. I was trapped. And the night was far from over. My mind latched onto the other rules, specifically rule number 4. Count your fellow passengers. With my heart in my throat, I slid my compartment door open a crack and peered out. I could see into the next car with the silent statue-like passengers. I counted them. The woman in the shawl, the man in the suit. 3 others further down. 5 people. I memorized their positions, their clothes, their unnervingly calm faces. I slipped back into my compartment and waited, listening to the steady, unnatural rhythm of the train, my own breathing ragged in the silence. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes, I looked again. I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6? My breath caught. There was a new figure. A tall, slender man in a dark overcoat standing near the far end of the car with his back to me. He wasn't there before. The train hadn't stopped. No one got on. He just appeared. As I watched, paralyzed, the woman in the shawl slowly turned her head. Her face, which had been blank, now wore a subtle, knowing smirk. Her eyes met mine through the gap, and they were filled with a cold, triumphant malice. I slammed the door shut, my back pressing against it, my body shaking. If the number of passengers changes, you must exit the train at the next available opportunity. But the train showed no signs of slowing down. It just kept gliding through the endless night. Then, a new sound. A faint, distant tolling. 1, 2, 3 times. It wasn't the train's bell. It was deeper, more resonant, like a church bell from a forgotten town. Rule number 6, ignore them. It was the sound of spirits boarding. A wave of intense cold washed through the car, so profound it felt like it was pulling the heat from my bones. I could feel them. A sense of unseen things flooding the corridor. A silent, invisible crowd. My gaze drifted to the passenger in the compartment across from mine. He was a young guy, probably a student, who had looked just as terrified as I felt when the rules were read. But exhaustion had clearly won his battle with fear. His head was slumped against the window, his chest rising and falling in a deep sleep. Rule number 7. Do not fall asleep there. I wanted to scream, to bang on the glass and wake him up, but I was frozen by my own fear. I couldn't move. I could only watch in horror as a shape began to form on the other side of his window. It was a black, inky mass, formless, but it pulsed with a malevolent energy. It pressed itself against the glass, right where the student's head was resting. For a horrifying second, I saw the vague outline of a face in the darkness, a face of pure, screaming agony. The student didn't stir. The black mass seemed to phase right through the glass, enveloping his head. There was no struggle, no sound. One moment he was there, sleeping. The next, he was gone, vanished. The seat was empty. The window was clear. The only sign he ever existed was the faint condensation on the glass. I stifled a sob, clapping a hand over my mouth. My eyes darted to the clock on the wall. 12:05 a.m. And of course, my bladder suddenly, painfully made its presence known. An urgent, undeniable need. But the clock kept ticking. 12:06 a.m. Rule number 5. No bathroom from 12:06 to 12:26. It was a primal biological urge warring with a supernatural command. I gritted my teeth, doubling over as a cramp seized me. I had to hold on. Just 20 minutes. As the minute hand crawled with agonizing slowness, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the end of the car, from the direction of the lavatory. It was a man's voice, shrill with agony, and it was cut off with a sickening, wet gurgle. Someone else hadn't listened. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the scream. The scream from the lavatory faded, leaving only the oppressive silence and the relentless rhythm of the wheels. The hands on the clock seemed to mock me, crawling towards the end of the forbidden time. My terror had sharpened into a kind of hyper-vigilant delirium. I was just a bundle of raw nerves. Just as the clock struck 12:27, my compartment door slid open again. The conductor. His shadowed face was impossible to read, but his presence filled the small space with an almost physical pressure. "Ticket," he said, his voice a low rasp. My hand trembled as I fished the ticket from my right pocket and held it out. He took it with slender, pale fingers. His touch was shockingly cold. He barely glanced at it before his eyes moved to my hands. Rule number 8. No more than 2 rings per hand. I wore no rings. My hands were bare. I held them up, palms out. He gave a curt, almost imperceptible nod, but his gaze shifted past me to the empty compartment that had belonged to the sleeping student. His head tilted slightly, a gesture that might have been curiosity or maybe satisfaction. He moved on, a silent reaper gliding down the corridor. He stopped at the compartment of the man in the suit, the one who had sat so still. I watched through the crack in my door as the man presented his ticket. Then the conductor's gaze fell to his hands. The man wore a gold wedding band on his left hand and 2 ornate, jewel-encrusted rings on his right. 3 rings. He opened his mouth, but no scream came. He opened his mouth, but no scream came out. His body began to dissolve. It wasn't violent. It was quiet and horrifyingly systematic. He just turned to gray dust, starting from his feet and rising up, his clothes and flesh disintegrating into a fine powder that drifted silently onto the velvet seat before vanishing completely. In seconds, he was gone. The conductor showed no reaction. He turned and continued his patrol. As he passed my door, I risked everything on one desperate question. "The driver," I whispered, my voice cracking. "What's the driver's name?" The conductor paused, turning his head just enough for one of his shadowy eyes to fix on me. A thin, cruel smile touched his lips. "His name," he rasped, "is Martin." Clung to, that foolish belief that I might clung to, that foolish belief that I might somehow survive this, evaporated, leaving only the cold, hard certainty of doom. This train wasn't going anywhere. Its purpose was the journey itself, an endless, looping nightmare designed to feed on the lost and the desperate. It was a rolling purgatory, and it was slowly, systematically digesting its occupants. I can't get off. I can't escape. As I sit here, a strange, bubbling black liquid has begun to seep from under my compartment door. It smells of sulfur and burnt sugar, and it moves with a slow, deliberate purpose, like a hungry amoeba. Tendrils of it are starting to rise, to lash out. The screams have started again, further down the car. This is it. The finale. I don't know why I'm even saying this, or who could possibly be listening. Maybe it's a message in a bottle, thrown into an ocean of static. A final warning from a ghost before he becomes one. Don't miss your train. Don't get on the one that comes for you at midnight, because it will never, ever let you go.